Okay, we're back. This is part 2. I was reading from Genesis chapter number 13, verse number 14. Here it is. It says, and the Lord said unto Abraham, after that Lot was separated from him, lift up now thine eyes, and look from the place where thou art northward and southward and eastward. And here's what the Lord says, because you have followed the direction and you got rid of something that was important. Remember, the blessing that was announced upon Abraham in chapter 12 was that when you separate from the familiar, your father's house, your kindred, your country, I'm going to speak something to you that's going to catapult you into your new. And so here it is, the 13th chapter. He says, God began to speak to Abram after he separated from what was familiar, what was kindred. Hear me. Here's a season of major decision. He says, now, what was interesting about this text? He says, after that Lot had separated from him. Remember, the order was, you're going to have to separate from Lot. You're going to have to. So in this season, we got a lot of invested in it. Now, God is not against family. Please hear me. We got to properly break down what the scripture is saying so that we can understand it. So our truth don't fight against God. What we understand don't fight against God. Jesus makes some very interesting statements. He says that anybody that loves his father and mother more than he loves me, they love me, then they are not worthy of the kingdom that I'm trying to give. What is he saying? He's not talking against family. What is he saying? He says fathers are pictures of ideals and traditions that we live by. Well, when he came on the scene, he was preaching a gospel of the kingdom that was different from the gospel of the forefathers of the Jewish people. And he says, I'm shifting you into a whole different idea. And if you love what your father said more than what I'm trying to shift you into, you're going to have a problem. He did not say I'm breaking up the family as far as biological. He's saying that I'm shifting your understanding when it comes to kingdom. And it's going to be difficult for you to make that shift because you have been reared in this and this is all you know. He says, I know where you are. I'm just trying to take you higher. And you have to make a decision that I'm shifting from to get a hold to what is new. Because the frequencies have changed. What I used to understand in frequency, now God is shifting. I can't understand. That's why it's so difficult and confusing, because I think I should know, and what I used to hear is not speaking to my right now. It's jittery. It's not even, I don't even get what's going on. And so until I decide I'm going to completely come compliant to what God is doing now, I won't even understand what he's saying. How can two walk together except they agree? There's a voice that can speak out of you that you run from. Adam, when he got in confusion, he ran from the voice. How can you run from the voice that is the voice that speaks to you and tells you direction? But when you get out of order, you run and try to hide from that is giving you or providing you direction. This is where we are in the season. So he says, once you separate from Lot, listen, once you separate Lot, he says you will be able to look from where you are standing. He didn't tell Abram to look at where he was standing. He says, look from where you are standing. And what you see, then you go to the next verse. 15th verse says, I will give you what you see if you stop looking at where you're standing. This is why I got to get rid of people that keep reminding where you are when they can't see where I'm trying to take you. Now, let me tell you again. He tells him after he had separated from Lot, who was his nephew, he cared for, he loved. Sometimes in God's call on my life, I have to actually shift away from something that I love. That's not him trying to break up the family. That's him saying to you, this is where you come into competition with my voice. Abraham, leave your father, your country, your kindred, because that's the place that you trust, and it'll come against the voice that I'm speaking. I'm telling you to make a faith move. And if you're not careful, you're going to look at faith move and how difficult it is. And you're going to say, I've never seen this in my lineage. And so you're going to say, I can't do it because the people that I think greater than me never done it. And so he says, I got to separate you from the voices that stop you from doing supernatural. They limit you. And so he says, once you separate from Lot, the one that you love, he says, now you can look from where you are standing. In other words, look from here. I didn't tell you look at where you're standing. I want you to look from where you're standing because I'm about to take you somewhere because you were obedient to me.
My God.
Interesting. Lot is the one, family are the ones that will actually remind you where you are standing. And when you say, I'm going from here, they are the one to remind you that you don't have the resources to leave. So God have to pull you from the sources that say that you can't leave. That you don't get yourself in trouble. You trying to get yourself in over your head. Somebody need to hear this. You try to get yourself. Now, when I say family, I'm talking about biological as well as those that you have allowed in your circle. God is trying to get you to a place that your circle don't make you stay where you are. Listen, when you separate from the important Lot, Abram, after he had separated from somebody he loved, he says, now look from where you're standing. Don't look at where you're standing, because if you can see, when I take away the influences that stop you from seeing, when I take away from the voices, take away the voices that tell you that you can't, now I'm going to tell you what you can see in your mind. I'm going to allow you to live it in your life. But you got to make a definitive decision that this time I'm going after what God has said, even though all the voices are saying I can't. By faith, I will walk into my new season. Now, let me go on real fast because I can't have this thing shut down on me again. Here it is. This is part two of it. Now, watch this. Here it is. Now, many of you that are listening to me, I feel this because I got to get this, because we are in a extremely different season. If you feel that this next season feels so much like the same, look for another season, because it's not the one. We are right now in a shifting of epic proportion. I'm telling you. You talking about Reformation, the Great Reformation of Martin Luther. This is the greater Reformation. God is shifting so much in the lives of people right now. If you're not careful, this season is going to be confusing to the seasoned. Because if you are so seasoned and just caught up in what was, it's going to be very difficult for you to come into what is. I'm just going to tell you the truth. This is a shift season. So many of you that are listening to me right now, grace is calling you right now. There's a grace call that is up on your life. Please hear me. Don't play any other games. I've said I'm so done with this game playing at church. We have taken. I'm not even going to go down that trail, because we're taking this whole thing. People are dying rapidly. People are dying. And listen, there are physical deaths, but what is more even crucial, there are deaths. The scripture says there'll be a great falling away. There's a great falling away in the church. People have fell away, but they didn't leave. And now they've learned how to operate inside it, but be out of order with God, because we have changed what God requires. Please hear me. I'm not even a traditional guy, but I got to tell you the truth, because so many lives are hinging on it. Because in this shift, a lot of things that was allowed before the shift won't be allowed after, and it can be very confusing, because a lot of things that you were able to operate in, God says, I winked that one season, and this next season I'm calling you into what I called you into. I gotta say it again. God says, one season I winked, but this next season I'm calling you into what I called you into. You're gonna have to make a definitive decision. Now, Paul gets a grace call. And in the grace call, it was so confusing to him, because Paul thought he was already operating in the call. And here's what is happening to some of you that are listening to me. You thought you were good in the call, but God is actually going to give you a grace call to explain to you that what you were working in was concocted by a man. Now I'm going to give you your life story. And it's going to be difficult, because you're going to be good, and you are good in what you thought was the story. But God says, I'm shifting you in this season, because I got to bring you into who I created and tear down what was created by man. And so I want to read this in Galatians chapter 1. Stay with me now. Please stay with me. And you can go share me again, because it's part 2. I got a part 1 video, and this is the part 2 video. I cannot let this go, because we're shifting right now. We're seeing some shift. There's some voices or some things that are declared is going to actually disqualify, because we're declaring something old. We're using old methods. We're trying to build a kingdom and make people subject to us, when God says, I already got a kingdom that I'm trying to build people up. I'm trying to restore my priesthood in people that have been downcast. And people are trying to bring people and make them a king, when I'm trying to use them to bring people into a place where they can live life at the level, because kingdom is requiring it now. Hear what I'm saying. Now, Paul, who got a grace call, many of you are going to get a grace call, is going to make you fall. You're going to fall back so you can spring forward. God is about to shift your company. He's about to shift what you see. He's about to shift everything. This is a God call. I would suggest that you answer. Destiny is calling. Answer it now. Answer it now. Answer it now. Answer it now. Now, the happenings that you see can work for you or it can work against you. God is not sending anything to tear you down. Life is working for you. But just as in the life of the children of the chosen in Egypt, God sent 10 plagues. Same God, same action. But to the ones that were obedient, it was a wonder. To the people that was disobedient, it was a plague. Here's what you got to understand. God has been sending things to get your attention. Will it be a wonder or will you turn it into a plague? The choice is yours. That is not trying to scare anybody. That's the truth on everything. Now, here it is. Grace is calling you. If you'll answer to the grace call, all of the things that you've been going through, the afflictions and all of the mishaps, God says grace is about to shift that all for you because life is here to work for you, not against you. God is not against you. God is not against you. Please hear me. God is not against you. Here it is. Paul says, Galatians 1. I want to talk about Paul because you are on the road to something good and grace is going to call and shift you into something God. That's what is happening right now. You're on the road to doing something good and grace is about to shift you into doing something God. The call on your life is about to happen. Now, this is Galatians chapter 1. You put that in. I'm gonna read verse 16, 17, 18, 19. But I'm gonna unpack something as I go because this is crucial. This is crucial. This is crucial. What time is it? My time is flying. Now watch this. Here it is. Here it is. Galatians chapter 1. Galatians chapter 1. I did not even go back and redo my finger, but I'm about to now. Galatians chapter 1. Galatians chapter 1. I'm going verse number 16. Please hear this. Please hear this. Please hear this. Galatians chapter 1, verse number 16. Let me read it. Let me read it. I'll just have to get to this later. Galatians, are y'all there?
Amen.
Okay, let's go. Galatians chapter 1. Here it is. There's a major shifting that is coming. There's a major shifting that is coming. This is part 2. There's a major shifting that is coming. I got video 1, this video 2. I was cut off. I'm starting again. Here it is. It says, the 15th verse says, but when it pleased God. Here it is. Paul is on his way to doing something good. Grace called. Grace is about to shift. Grace is about to shift your company. It's about to shift your directions. You are finally getting the grace call. Remember, I said last week, grace didn't allow you to go to the party. It didn't allow you to get invited to the party of some that you thought would invite you. And on the flip side, grace is going to allow you to host a party and you're going to have the fortitude not to invite. It's not because you're mad. It's because of the shifting that you have felt. This is going to happen in several areas, not just in church, but even in your secular life, because you're so potent to what God is trying to do. Grace is covering now because it's ready to launch. This is a launch and release season for you, but grace had to cut off some things because it had to change what you were hearing so that you can hear God and really maximize the potential that's on the inside of you. So here's Paul on the way to do something good, and then he get a grace God call that shifted his direction. You're on a path to something, but God is changing your course. That's what he's saying. Now here it is, Galatians chapter 1, verse number 15. It says, but when it pleased God. Well, listen to what it says. But when it pleased God, who separated me from my mother's womb. Who separated me from my mother's womb and called me by his grace. Now that's an interesting saying. Paul said, but when it pleased God, who called me from my mother's womb. I need you to hear this. Paul had been working a while in what is called the Jew religion. He was good at it. But now he gets a grace call. And he was persecuting the church, doing what his forefathers told him to do. He was good at it. And now he's saying, grace called me when I thought I was called. Grace called me when I thought I was doing the right thing. Grace shifted my orders, even though I thought I was in right order. I was making some people happy, and grace called me. He says, God separated me from my mother's womb. This grace was for me when I came from my mother's womb. But I done operated in something this many years. Even though I was called from my mother's womb, there's some of you that first time you're going to get the call, but you were graced from your mother's womb. You've acted a complete fool your entire life, and now grace is about to shift your course. just like it did Paul. Paul said, he said, I got people scared of me because of what I done, but they don't recognize I was called from my from my mother's womb. Now grace has actually called me because I got smart enough in my own wisdom to try to do things to make people happy. But now grace is going to come and confiscate me and call me into what it is. I got to do this. And so it says, when it pleased God, you're about to see the God pleasing season because he's about to change your course. It's for such a time as this. Watch what it said. 16th verse said, to reveal his son in me. Well, what was revealed into you before? It was religion. Now he's going to give me his son. So many of you have been operating in religion. Now you're going to get a relationship. Oh, this power. Now watch this. To reveal his son in me, that I might preach him among the heathen. Immediately, I didn't confer with flesh and blood. In other words, this grace call is going to call people to an unusual place, and you're not going to call somebody to ask them what they think about it, because you're going to know that this is grace to cut. Now, how do you come to this conclusion? Because I got the context here. It says, when grace called me, when it pleased God, grace called me into my new, when I was operating good in my old. Watch it. Let me show it to you. Because if you go back to the 12th verse, let's read the 12th verse. What 12th verse? For I need to receive it of man. Oh, let's go 11th verse. But I certify you, brother, that the gospel which was preached to me is not after man. This is brand new. This is a grace call. I was fighting and pulling and in an expensive relationship trying to please man, and God taking all that away so he can give me what is valuable. What is valuable? My call. I'm trying to compete over there. Over here, I have no competition. Watch what it says here. Watch what it says. It says, but I certify you, brother, that when the gospel which I preach of me, which was preached of me, is not after man, for I neither received it of man, neither was I taught it, but by revelation. I got a revelation of Jesus Christ. Watch it. For ye have heard of my conversation in time past in the Jews' religion, or in the religion of my fathers. In the Jew religion, how that beyond measure I persecuted church. I was more zealous than any of my brothers. I had a reputation of being a man that would get the job done. Watch what it said. Watch it. I persecuted the church above measure and wasted it. 14th verse said, and profited in the Jew religion above many my equals in my own nation. I was the man because I stuck to it and was diligent, being more exceedingly zealous of the traditions of my father. Then the 15th verse comes. But when it pleased God. But when it pleased God. I was pleasing man, and I did it for a season. But when it pleased God, he says, now let me call you into a grace call. And so here's what we get. Paul is actually talking about Acts chapter 9. Paul in Acts chapter 9 has gone before the high court, the high priest, and has got an execution order to go and to persecute everybody that is speaking of this new way. And on the road to Damascus, he get a call from the master. There's several of you that are on a path and you're about to get a grace call from God. It is going to change your course. I know your course has seemed to be like an obstacle course, but that's okay. God is going to show you that everything that you have gone through, God called you from your mother's womb, but today grace is calling you and this is about to change the direction. And so as Paul did, he says it's very important that you understand, once you get this grace call, don't you confer with man, because everybody's not going to hear what you're about to hear. Everybody's not going to see it the way that you see it. I've got to get you to understand it. So if you go to confer with somebody that has not been confirmed, you're going to be confused. Oh, Lord. Because they're going to tell you from what was when God's trying to shift you into what is. Your very life is dependent on you hearing from God. So Abraham, I need to separate you from your father, your kindred, your country. Why? Because those are the familiar voices that won't let you walk in faith. They keep seeing you like they see you. That's little old bitty. That's all let's call it. They never done anything right. I tell you, they ain't never gonna do it. I tell you, they ain't gonna never. And so what he says is you separate from Lot. That's the last piece. I'm going to let you stand where you are, and everything you see from where you are, I'm going to give it to you. I'm not telling you to look at where you are. I'm just telling you to look from where you are. That's Genesis 13, verse number 14. Now let's read on Because I got to get this. 17th verse says, watch this. Now here's Paul talking about the grace call that changed my course when I thought I was doing everything right because I was getting applause from the people that I was trying to please. You get applause from the people that you're trying to please, and you think that you're doing the right thing because you look up to them. But when grace comes, you get you get locked out. In other words, Paul says like that, I was apprehended by that. He says, and now I'm trying to apprehend that has apprehended me. What is he talking about? He's talking about Acts chapter 9 again. On the road to Damascus, he was knocked down. There was a light that shined. And he immediately said, this is more powerful than me. I got a court order to execute an order, but there's an order that I just heard that is more powerful than the order that I got in my hand. You're about to find out that there's an order that comes from heaven that's going to override the order that you got from man. And he's going to shift your course. And he's going to say, now, here's time for you to receive by revelation. You hear what Paul said? He said, I didn't confer with man. I got it by revelation. I got it by revelation. And so here it is. He says this. He says, 17th verse says, neither went I up to Jerusalem. We don't even know how powerful that is. Now watch it. He says, neither went I up to Jerusalem to them which were apostles before me. Watch what it says. But I went to Arabia and returned again unto Damascus. Watch this, the 18th verse. After 3 years, I went up to Jerusalem to see Peter and abode with him 15 days. But of the apostles I saw none, say John, James, the Lord's brother. Now, James, the Lord's brother, if you really exegete this, he was the church bishop at Jerusalem. So he says the only people I talked to was Peter, who was a liaison between Jew and the Greeks, and James, who was over the church. The rest of them I didn't see no need. Now, please hear me, because this is important. He says, I did not go up to Jerusalem when I heard the grace call. What is Jerusalem? He says, I didn't go up to a council to meet with them to see if they endorse what I'm about to say. Now, I'm not against council. I think counsel is great. The Bible says, out of a multitude of counsel comes safety. Here's what I'm saying. That you are not going to connect and be limited just because out of default. What you are going to get is counsel that is in line with your calling. This is going to be important because now you got to move by revelation. Yes. And revelation will fight with your current situation because God is shifting you into something new from something old. I need you to hear this because this is going to be important. There's a call, a grace call that is up on your life. You're going to be like Paul. Neither went out up to Jerusalem to them which are apostles before me. Why did he not, if he's called an apostle, why did he go up to the apostles before him? Because he recognized my due order has been shifted. I have been given a shift in direction. I'm about to change some things. They might not like me and what I'm about to change, but I cannot confer with that because there's a grace calling that has apprehended me. I already know. When I fail, I recognize that what I'm feeling is greater than what I'm holding in my hand right now. There's a shift in orders and direction. And I got to recognize, some of you right now listening to me, there's been a shift in your direction. Your course has changed, but you're afraid because you think that you're going to lose some friends in the shift. I'm here to tell you that God says when you get rid of them, you can look from where you're standing, and I'm going to give you what you see in your mind just because you followed the direction. Hear me. Now watch this. 18th verse says, this is so interesting. Let me paraphrase. Paul says, then after, he says, once I got the grace call, I didn't go, I knew I was called an apostle. Who ordained me apostle? I knew that the apostleship was placed upon me. I took off. Yes. Because the apostolos, it was upon me. It's the one sent by the sender. Now I'm being sent because I got a revelation on the way to Damascus, on the way to doing something else, and I knew that the grace had called me. I knew the boss had clocked me in, and so now I'm clocked in, and so if the boss clocked me in, who can clock me out? Nobody. So I need to do the work. And so I didn't see the need to go and confer to see if you are pleased with the calling. All right. I got to do what God said. Now notice, he says, I didn't go there to ask. He says, after 3 years, listen to this language. After 3 years, I went up to Jerusalem to see Peter and Paul in 15 days. But others of the apostles I did none, say James, the Lord's brother. I'm reading fast. I know I am. It says, now, let me make sure I'm good. But others of the apostles saw I none, say James, the Lord's brother. Now, the thing that I write unto you, behold, before God I lie not. Afterward I came into the region of Syria and Caesarea, and was unknown by face unto the churches of Judea which were in Christ. But they had heard only that he which persecuted in time past now preaches the gospel of faith, which once he destroyed. And they glorified God in me. You about to bring glory to God because people know your past, and now God is shifting your course. That's why the enemy don't want you to shift completely into the new course, because if you shift completely at God's order, then they'll know that there was an abrupt change. He wants you to subtly stay into what everybody else has already diminished. That's why God is not getting glory. I'm going to preach this anyhow. Now, watch this. So that was 3 years after receiving the calling. He said he didn't go up to Jerusalem. He did. Then finally he said, after 3 years, I go up and meet Peter. And then I talk to James. Now watch this. The second chapter of Galatians starts out with something interesting. Well, here it is. It says, then 14 years after, I went up again to Jerusalem and Barnabas and took Titus with me. And I went up by revelation. I didn't go up by obligation. I didn't say I had to do this, but it was revealed in me by revelation that I should go. I'm not doing anything in this next season out of obligation. I'm only doing it out of revelation. Because once I get a revelation, I then hear, blessed art thou, Eugene, for flesh and blood could not have revealed this to you. And since you have obeyed me out of revelation, I'm going to give you keys to something that will open many doors. I'm going to open a door unto you that no man can close. Okay. I'm going to close a door that no man can open. That's why we should go everywhere up by revelation, because once this is revealed, Christ to me, as Paul just said, when grace called, it was God's good pleasure to reveal his son a revelation. And so the second verse says that then 14 years later, I went up again to Jerusalem with Barnabas and took Titus with me. And I went up to Jerusalem and communicated unto him. I went up by revelation. That is the most interesting statement ever. Now, here's why I wanted to open that up. Is because first Paul gets the call. He says 3 years before I go up to Jerusalem. And then he said, I only talked to Peter and James, right? And then he says, now 14 years later, I go back up again by revelation. So I didn't go in that period of time because God didn't tell me to go. Nobody could obligate me to go because I didn't get the call from them. So they can't obligate me to be nowhere. Right. I only go when God reveals to go there, go there. Now notice what's interesting about this. Perhaps you didn't see that. So he says 3 years the first time and 14 years the second time. So that's 17 years of work in his apostolic call before the people of the ministry even understood that he was at work. I want to open this up to somebody. There are some of you that have been so caught up in them knowing the work. God says do the work. They'll get the memo later. 17 years of Paul operating before the revelation of God says, now go and tell them what you're doing. Go and see. He said, now I didn't come up by revelation. I didn't come to ask permission. I am already doing the work that grace called me into. I'm not going to be hindered. I'm not going to be slowed down. Listen to me once again. I got to make this perfectly clear. Pastor G is not against a relationship. But Pastor G is saying you better make sure that the relationship you connect to understand where you are. Okay. They got to know what the call is. I can't not by default just put this under anything. I've got to make sure that God is telling me to do this. This is a shift right now in grace. Now watch this. Third verse. But neither Titus, who was with me, being a Greek, was compelled to be circumcised. He says, I knew when I went to Jerusalem, there was some traditions that they're going to want me to be under. I knew that. I knew it. And so he says, neither Titus that was with me felt compelled to be circumcised. And fourth verse says, and that because of false brethren unaware brought in, who came in privately to spy out our liberty, which we have in Christ Jesus, that they might bring us into bondage. In other words, there was people that came to spy out that I've been called by grace to read the text, Galatians 1 and 2, that this next call is a call of grace. You are operating in something that pleased a lot of people. It was tradition. You always wanted to. But this next season is a shifting in grace. It's a revelation season. You won't do anything out of default. You will do everything out of revelation. And it's going to be such a change and shift in course that most that have been operating so long won't even be aware that God has shifted. That's how interesting it's going to be. That's why in this next season of shift, when the frequency change, there's going to be a change in communication. There's a lot of gibberish going on that you don't understand, but you keep connecting yourself because that's how and what you were taught to do. And when God calls us into our new, when God gives us a door opening into our new, you can't pray to the God to change his course because he knows exactly what he wanted in you. So many right now are running into major obstacles because of one thing. They don't recognize God's voice now. And they have operated out of tradition and never ever came into the place of God. Now, God is a God of mercy. What does that mean, Pastor G? He allow just like you do your children. When your children are disobedient from you, that does not mean you cut them off. You still give them their clothes and you still feed them. But you don't give them the keys to the car. Amen. What does that mean? Because you can't follow the instructions in maturity, I can never give you what I wanted to give you. So but you are my child. I will let you sit over there. You got your room in the back. But I wanted to give you a house. But you lived in Rome. And so here's Paul. He said, when God called me, when it pleased God, remember, he was already a famed man in his Jewish religion. But on the road to Damascus, Acts chapter 9, he got a grace call. That's what he said, a grace call, which changed my course. In other words, what I thought I was just operating to please somebody. Now God, for the first time in my life, is going to give me what he wanted. And so he shifted. And that's when he comes to say, after 3 years of the calling, he says, I heard by revelation. I was not given by man, so I seen no need to go ask him if you feel good about what I do. That's going to take a faith move. And then he says, I went up to see Peter and James. None of the other apostles before me. Now, the interesting how the text said before me. Why is he coming into apostleship and not feel the need to go see the council of apostles? Because he knows that who I am is shifting from what was, even though we got the same name. Wow. Wow. Even though we got the same calling or title, it's a difference in me. And now I come to shift what you have believed.